Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Mike Beer, the DRF race of the day for Thursday, October the 22nd, race number 6 at Keeneland. Let's throw up the field for this nice two-other-than allowance race going a mile and a 16th on the turf. We kick off a 50-cent pick 4 wager. And Mike, this is a big field. It's very competitive. This looks like a spread leg to kick off the pick 4.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was pretty tough to really land on anybody with a lot of confidence anyway. Just a lot of horses coming from a lot of different directions, Dan. Some prior, graded stakes kind of horses here who look like they're trying to really find themselves again. There's just a lot going on in this race.
You can download free formulator past performances for this race on the Race of the Day event page at DRF.com. Access them, handicap along with us. We'll talk about these horses in program number order, beginning with the number 1, Artie's Rumor, who in my opinion is an automatic contender simply because he was claimed out of his last race by Michael Maker. And we've seen it so many times that Maker has an eye for these kind of horses on the turf, especially stretching them back out in distance. Now, let's watch Artie's Rumor's most recent race going 7/8 of a mile at Kentucky Downs. Now, he was beaten by a Maker-trained horse, the red-hot Unmoored, who has now won 4 in a row and 5 of his last 6. After Unmoored won this race, he came back to win a Pimlico off-the-turf starter allowance with a 93 buyer. Far outside is Artie's Rumor. It looks like he's going to go by, and the sharp Unmoored says no.
Yeah, he had all the momentum in this race and then didn't get by at the end, but it was, a step in the right direction. Of course, this race was for his prior trainer, Bernie Flint. But this horse, it just held very consistent form for his prior connections. You mentioned that you can't just automatically stand against these Maker horses off the claim, Dan, and you're right. I mean, personally, I'm getting pretty tired of seeing these horses come back in these races where, you almost feel like you have to use them somehow because it just feels like they all improve. And if Artie's Rumor improves even a little bit off of his last race, he's going to be very tough in here.
Here's an interesting xFactor, the number 2 Fighting CB, who was a graded stakes winner for Kenny McPeek's second time out at Saratoga. And over the winter, Kenny wanted to run this horse, perhaps in some Derby preps. Heck, he was second in the Street Sense Stakes on the dirt at Churchill Downs as a 2-year-old. He came up with an injury in January. He missed a lot of time. I think they always kind of thought he was a turf horse anyway, so this is a good spot for his return, but it's a long layoff and facing older horses.
Yeah, there's just a lot working against him. His with anticipation was good when he won that race at Saratoga. He did fairly steal that race, getting to the lead when nobody else went, and he really took advantage. But he still ran well that day, and he also ran really well in his debut, too. So it looks like he was cut out to be a nice horse, Dan. Maybe he'll take a step forward. I do like him getting back on the turf. I think this is where his future lies. But this is the race of the day, so you have access to the formulator PPs. Look up Kenny McPeek's stats off of long layoffs like this, 6 months and longer off of layoffs. The stats are not good.
The 3 is Silver and Lie, who should be part of the pace picture in here. Beaten favorite, however, last time out at Indiana Grand. You rarely get a big price on a Tom Amos trained runner. I think you're going to get a good price here. That most recent race, though, was somewhat discouraging.
Yeah, it didn't run well at all last time, so he's going to have to rebound off of that and then probably take another pretty significant step forward as well, Dan, because his prior races, while they're fine, they don't really make him much of a contender in here.
Now, the number 4, Bundi Bunan, doesn't have much tactical speed. He is a one-run closer in the truest sense of the word, and he's been facing some really tough competition. I mean, the Kentucky Turf Cup, he had no chance in that race against those kind of horses. Just draw a line through it. And two back, he was in against Say the Word, who came back to win. He was third in the Singspiel. Then he came back to win the Northern Dancer last week at Woodbine. So he's been in against some good horses. Interesting move from Nacho Correas with the blinkers on, but I think the key is this. I think he's going to get some pace, and I like him cutting back in distance.
Yeah, I agree with all that stuff. I like him cutting back. And his form, he had blinkers on right up until the beginning this summer in June, and then they took him off, and now they're going to put him back on. I think he was probably better with the blinkers on, Dan. The race at Saratoga 3 back, before he just got in too tough against the really hot Say the Word, and then, last time where I guess they were just taking a shot. He was in way over his head. But his race at Saratoga before that, he actually ran pretty well in that race. There was a really strong pace going on. He got in very tight in the stretch when Value Engineering, that Chad horse who was like impossible to ride, drifted over on him and actually cut this horse off. And he had to take up pretty sharply in the stretch. He ran well that day. He has races that I think give him a real chance to beat this field.
You and I are fans of the 5 Flapjack. There's a race for him somewhere. Maybe this is the spot. Maybe I'm jumping off him a little bit too soon because he's going to be a good price. He hasn't really done a lot of turf routing. As a matter of fact, only once in his career, his second lifetime start, which was a pretty decent performance preceding his stakes victory on synthetic in the Arlington, Washington Futurity. Now, last time out, they ran 6.5 in the Franklin Simpson. It was a race that's already produced a next out restricted stakes winner at Laurel. Maybe Flapjack stretching back out is what he wants. There are a lot of maybes, though, about this horse.
Yeah, to me, he's the kind of horse who, if he's a good price in this race, a bigger price, then I'm just going to use him because I do think he has talent. And as you said, I just don't want to get off him yet, especially if he's going to be a big price in this race. I don't know what his best game is, Dan, if I'm being perfectly honest about it. And when you look at him on paper, it kind of feels like Jack Sisterson doesn't know what his best game is either. They're trying a lot of different things with this horse. Now they'll try and stretch him back out, and maybe it'll work. If it works, I feel like this horse does have the ability to take a pretty big step forward here.
The 6-stage ready, like the 4 Bundi Bunan, likes to come from way off of the pace, as he did in his most recent start at Indiana Grand. He defeated 2 next out winners. The runner-up won an Indiana bred stakes race with an 84 buyer. The third horse came back in the same company and won with an 82. That was an optional claiming non-winners of one other then. While it does seem like he's in sharp form, I do wonder if that was just the right spot for him, and he's taken a big step up in class.
Feels like this is a much tougher race. As a closer, he's probably going to have to take a step forward because, as you mentioned, Bundi Bunan has the same running style, and it feels like that horse is probably just better than Stage Ready is, at least at this point. I mean, maybe this horse still has some upside, Dan, and you want to sort of bank on that and hope he gets a good trip. He'll certainly be a very fair price in this race.
Current hasn't won a race since he grabbed the Grade 3 Bourbon over course and distance as a 2-year-old. He just hasn't panned out for Todd Pletcher. He's run some fast races. He just got nipped in the Pan American back in March. I thought that was a pretty good effort for Current. But since that race, again, they've been trying him in tough spots. It hasn't exactly worked out. I think the last race was simply too far for him.
Yeah, I agree. I like that they're going to try and cut him back now because they've sort of concentrated on longer distances for most of this year. And I think cutting back could work for him. And you're right, I guess, that he hasn't really panned out. But on the other hand, Pletcher really doesn't feel like this horse has disappointed him at all. I mean, he just keeps running him back in every kind of tough race that he can run him in. I feel like the class relief could really work for this horse. And I didn't really want to give up on him either. I'm a little bit of a fan of his, and I feel like they finally get him in the right spot here.
The 8 Sabador might be a sneaky player for trainer Connor Murphy. I liked his North American debut way back in early 2019 at Keeneland. He was a gigantic price against some solid allowance horses. He really didn't break. He came very wide into the stretch. He made up some late ground. They ran him in the Turf Classic again, bricks and mortar. I mean, that was way too tough of a spot. And then he went away for a long time. He has returned with much better speed. And in his last race, he caught a hot horse, a horse that came back to win at Keeneland with a 92 buyer, has won 3 of his last 4. I think a good trip's coming from Sabador.
Yeah, I like his tactical speed. I'm starting to wonder how good he is. I'm with you. I thought he was very interesting after his debut here at Keeneland last year, his stateside debut, just because it felt like to me like they were prepping him. And then it was very interesting to see him come back in a Grade 1 after that. Not that he ran that well in that race. So we'll see what happens here. I didn't love his last race, but as you mentioned, that was a very hot horse he was chasing in there.
High Promise, the number 9, another horse that hasn't won a race in over 2 years, but I thought he ran like a horse that needed his last start. Most recently at Churchill Downs, he prompted the pace, really no excuses from a trip standpoint, I didn't believe, and then he just tired in the stretch. I think he can improve second start of the form cycle. He has a race or 2 on his page that indicates that he can step with these kind of horses. It's all about pace. If this pace heats up, I'm worried about him because he likes to be real close.
I think he's at his best when he can be part of the pace. I agree with you there. And we'll just see. I sort of agree with you as well, Dan, that he has a race that would make him really tough in here. And if he's, a bigger kind of price come post time, I would try to find a way to use him because I know that this is a field he can beat.
Power Player is a horse that's put in some tough spots in his career. He's had a couple of trips, and now he's in the Brett Calhoun barn. Didn't really do much running last time out at Churchill Downs. He still has some upside. I just need to see something from Power Player before I can back him. He should be a good price.
Yeah, agreed. He's going to have to show some signs of life here. I'm when we get to our picks, you'll see that I threw him in there. That's mostly because I actually had high hopes for this horse as a 3-year-old. I thought he had a lot of potential. And since he's come back off the layoff for his 2 starts this year, and it was a pretty long layoff, he just really hasn't done much of anything. I'm giving him a pass for the first one. He totally missed the break in that race. Then he steadied pretty hard on the backstretch. And after that, they just took him to the outside and let him get tired through the stretch. I don't really have as much of an excuse last time, Dan, but he's third off the layoff now, and he gets a trainer change here. I'll give him one more chance.
Let's watch the most recent start for the upwardly mobile number 11, By Your Side, who was an early 2-year-old, won his first 2 starts, including the Grade 3 Sanford on dirt, now trying to rejuvenate his career on the grass. This is his second turf start, his second race with blinkers. He makes the lead briefly there at the 3/16 pole. He's in the black blinkers, and he's no match for Hey Dakota, who's just a battle-tested older horse that might just simply be better than By Your Side. By Your Side's figures keep creeping up, however, and I like him stretching out a little bit in distance here. I think he has some tactical speed. I don't know. We've seen a lot of these hard-hitting veterans' best race. I'm not sure if we've seen this horse's best yet.
True enough. I mean, if you like this horse, you're banking on all of his upside here and hoping he can take another step forward in this race, which is far from impossible. Obviously he had the 2-year-old races where it felt like he could be pretty good, like he was cut out to be good. Personally, I never bought into him as a 2-year-old. I didn't love either of his first 2 wins. And then he didn't really do that much running in the grade 1s after that. But there is still a chance that he turns out to be good.
Dune of Palat, this horse completes the body of the field. Beautiful pedigree. This horse is shipping over from Europe. First-time Lasix for Brendan Walsh. Really wasn't facing the creme de la creme, so to speak, overseas, but exits a solid enough handicap that produced a couple of next-out winners. More of a synthetic horse over there.
Yeah, 2 big wins on synthetic. But you know what? You remember her Dan Graham Motion had her over here, Rusty Slipper. She was a really good turf horse. Never really made it to the top level, but she was a multiple graded stakes winner. That filly could run a little bit. This filly has a lot of pedigree, comes over for a very good trainer. I didn't think it was an easy spot for this colt rather, but certainly there's a lot of potential to improve here.
Tough outside post for this one as well. Let's take a look at our top picks. We kick off the 50-cent pick 4 with race number 6 at Keeneland. You're going with the late kicker, Bundy Boonan, the number 5 from off of the pace. This horse certainly has races, and all he needs is a little bit of race luck and a little bit of pace luck. He'll be firing at the end. Yeah,
you're going to bank on him to catch a little pace to run it and then get a clean trip into it somehow. But I do like him cutting back in distance for this.
I'm really not against him at all. He has figures. He fits from a class perspective. You're right. I like them cutting back in distance as well, but I do like By Your Side's upside. I want to give him one more chance on the turf to maybe get the jump on Bundy Boonan turning into the stretch and maybe hold him off. But spread race for me in the 50-cent pick 4. Mike's going 4-10-7-5. I'm going 11-4-1-8. It's the Thursday race of the day, and it's Keeneland's race number 6. Best of luck.